All right, here is your review for your set of notes, or no, set of notes for your test. It's coming tomorrow, which would be is it Thursday? Yeah, I don't remember. Wednesday? It's Wednesday, whatever. But your test is coming up tomorrow after this. So, anyways, I forget what day it is. Anybody else have any problems? Just like run together. So, anyway, so what I have in front of me are all of your note sets, and I just want to walk through some of them again to give you an idea of what you might talk about. I have shrunk the test down, so it's not going to be nearly as long as your other tests. It's going to have some of the bigger issues on it, but I just wanted to recap what some of your notes were all about and perhaps go over into some vocabulary words for you to remember. So I'm just going to pull down your note sets. You don't necessarily have to have yours out, and I'm not going to take forever on this. So hopefully this will help you out somewhat. But your first set of notes for this unit, and I think we had like 7 sets, talked about medieval culture, and that was a theme throughout most of this. And the first section of notes talked about things that were coming into play during this time period, like architecture, your first beginning here. The idea of what Romanesque versus Gothic was. Romanesque, remember the video, they were, sorry, midday, I'm yawning. Whew. It's not good for me. I need to get some coffee. But anyways, Romanesque were very angular buildings, like a lot of your universities are today. And Gothic buildings, they were a little bit darker, and they had a lot more ornate, perhaps, and a little bit darker in style. They also had stained glass windows too. So with the influx of these countries and doing well, they have money to spend on things, so that might include in their buildings and structures and such. The other part of your first set of notes, we're talking about universities, how during this time period, your early Middle Ages, your earliest universities were in your countries that had a lot of money, like Italy, France, and England. And the earliest topics that they studied were grammar, logic, math, music, and astronomy. You also have this idea of study of theology, which is right here. I'm trying to find where my little marker thing is. It's not showing up. But anyways, theology is the study of religion. Now, this is important because you have a guy named Thomas Aquinas who pushes the idea of studying religion, but also tying into what's called scholasticism or scholastic, or starting to ask questions about your about the world, about philosophy and things that are going on. And he's important because he pushed the idea that the government should help people and its citizens, especially in the ideas of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. In the second set of notes, things not so good, is talking about the Black Death. So if I ask you a question on the test, just be able to tell me a little bit about the Black Death, what it was about, how it was caused, what type of things socially. So remember, part of it is because there was waste everywhere, and there were rats, and rats carry these fleas, which had the bacteria, and people just weren't clean, so there's rats everywhere. And that it was pretty fatal. For the most part, at least like 75%, 80% fatal for anybody who got it. There's a yawn again. And the big problem that it caused during this time period is it killed like half the population of Asia, but also Europe. And then the effects were, well, you had a lot of people dying, but you also end up having the feudal system weaken. And why that is important is because the people who are in the lower class end up being able to go higher class because, well, half the population above you has also died too. And so the feudal pyramid just kind of dissipates. Then your third set of notes, as I got to transition over to, is talking about troubled continent. So this is really going into the growth of these borders at the time period. We have guys like Henry V and Eddie III who are causing problems for France. Eddie III declaring himself King of France, Henry V fighting them and using archery. Just be able to, no dates, don't worry about places, but you might want to be able to tell me why archery was important and how reliable it was, as you can see right here in this next section. But also be able to tell me about Joan of Arc, an early martyr for the church. She helped the French people. She had the idea that God was telling her to talk to the Prince of France and to go forth and to defeat the English, and it worked. Unfortunately, it cost her her life as she was martyred or burned at the stake. And then we get into the Renaissance. Now, this is the big part of your test, is the Renaissance. The idea that you have this rebirth of knowledge, philosophy, change, social changes, things like that, mostly because things are going well in places that have money. Renaissance really happens in places that have a lot of money, especially in Italy and France and England, but it happens in different ways. Where Italy had a lot of the artists, and the painters, the architects, and things like that, England, we said, was more of like William Shakespeare in writing. But this is where you have that growth of the word secular. Remember, secular means not of religion. It doesn't mean satanic or anything. It just means that it's not religious in nature, whether it's art or writings, either way. So some of these city-states become pretty popular and wealthy, like Flanders and Venice, like we've talked about before, and Florence. Here's one there. And the introduction of this guy named Marco Polo, anybody say that? And his journeys to Asia, which got people interested in what is going on there in terms of trade for Europe. So some of your biggest changes or concepts for the Renaissance time period, sorry, I'm stumbling all over the place trying to keep my notes set over, is politics. Or politics, actually writings. So you have this secular type of writing of this time period by these guys. You have Machiavelli. Remember, Machiavelli wrote The Prince, telling people that your leaders need to be both beast and princely, and they should know when to do good and they should know when to do bad, things like that. That's the idea of something being Machiavellian. And then Jonathan Swift wrote A Modest Proposal. This is a social book. This is to get people to focus on a problem so it doesn't get any worse than it could possibly be. And his was A Modest Proposal where he said that they should eat the orphans. That way it got rid of the orphans on the street, but also it fed the people who were hungry. Now remember, he was being tongue-in-cheek, or being sarcastic, or using tongue-in-cheek. So he wasn't really serious about this. But what it did is it shed a light on social issues at the time period. And then your last two here are vernacular writings. People who wrote in everyday languages. Didn't write in the fancy Latin or anything else. They wrote in just plain old speak for the people. Chaucer being an example of which. He wrote plain speak, and he wrote for middle lower class people called the Canterbury Tales. Dante Alighieri, on the other hand, was the guy who wrote the Divine Comedy, the story of him looking for his long lost love Beatrice through heaven, hell, and purgatorio, or purgatory. And it's where we get a lot of concepts of hell today, but also, you know, your sarcastic type of writing, satire, political writings, all that comes from the Divine Comedy by Dante. Your next set of notes, is that a short one? No, it's not. But was the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg, or John Gutenberg, I guess, that he created this. He really didn't create it, he more modified it, because printing press was, I believe, invented technically in China, but it was developed better by Gutenberg. It allowed for people to get books, more books readily available, so more people could read, more people became smarter, or more educated, and books were cheaper too. So people could have all types of writings, not just the Bible, but that was the more popular one at the time period. And then we get to your artists, your four Ninja Turtles. Leonardo da Vinci, who did all sorts of things. He was a sculptor, he was an artist, he did the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper. Michelangelo, or Mikey, painted the Sistine Chapel. He did the sculptures of David and Moses, painted Madonna. And Donatello, or sorry, painted Madonna was Raphael Sanzio, who also did the School of Athens, which we've seen before. And the last one was Donatello, the sculptor. Know your four Ninja Turtles. That would be important, which one did which. And then lastly on this page is Shakespeare. We talked about William Shakespeare and how in England the Renaissance was a little bit different in that it was done more for writing than real like art. And even today, you don't have a lot of English artists. It's more of writings at the time period. So Shakespeare really comes in, and so I want you to know about his genres. He wrote tragedies, he wrote comedies, and he wrote historical plays. So just be able to give me a little bit of idea of Shakespeare, know who he is. Maybe give me a couple of his plays. Easy ones: Romeo and Juliet, Henry V, we talked about earlier in a little review here. Just be able to know a couple of those. And then finally, your last page, skip Reformation. We didn't do Reformation, so don't worry about that. But we did talk about exploration. And this is big too because this leads us into U.S. history. So with exploration, if you think about it, these rich places get a lot of money. When you have a lot of money, what do you want? You want more money. So they get more money and they want to go out and explore. They want new land. They want to get there before everybody else and want to get rich. They don't really want to make new friends nor share what they find with any other people. One of the biggest things is that the Silk Road was heavily taxed. A lot of Asian goods cost a lot of money, so they were looking for a faster route. So by way of new technology like the astrolabe or the compasses, they were able to go much further. So some of your early explorers, and these were the big four were Portugal, Spain, France, and England. Your early explorers, you've got a list here. Da Gama went around Africa. Columbus went to Cuba, but not the United States. Magellan went all the way to the Pacific, and Cartier went up north into Canada. So just be able to know which guys which direction. It's really not too hard. And then the last thing is the Columbian Exchange. This is the big concept for exploration. So really make sure that you know this. All this is this is the exchange between North America, Europe, Africa, and South America. Kind of what they call a triangle trade, if you can imagine. But that's not triangle, it's 4 places. I know, close enough. But like a triangle trade route where one place gets something and they give something. So what you have in this set of notes is what America gets, what we give to other places, and then what we get in return. So be able to tell me what places, what we got, and what we gave, and how that changed things. Like we gave potatoes, tomatoes, corn, chocolate, tobacco to the Europeans. What did we gain? We gained a lot of the field products and all different animals. And the big overall changes here is tobacco and sugarcane coming in led to slavery. And then it'll also change the face of what Europe looked like as well as killing off a lot of Native Americans in the United States. So there you go. It's not a long test. I chopped it up and took a lot of the hard stuff out. So just look back through this stuff if you need to. PowerPoints that we've done outside of class are still available on YouTube. And the note sets, all you have to do is go back into your Google Classroom and you can find those. So there you go. In under 13 minutes, there's your review for your test. So that will be on Wednesday. So good luck. See you later.